Inner Light Show. It's time to stop just surviving, and it's time to begin to thrive. It's time to live happier and healthier. Turn stress into strength. Noted author Debbie Mandel will show you how to move beyond personal doubts and fears and into positive perception to turn on your inner light. Here's your host, Debbie Mandel.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to my show. Our guest expert is Paul Selig, writer, teacher, and medium. Has a private practice as an intuitive and channel in New York City, teaches at NYU's Tisch School, and is the author of The Book of Love and Creation. Help rebuild your inner life with spiritual psychology. Welcome, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm delighted. This is a different kind of interview for me, and I have to tell you, I read your book, and I loved it. I felt really good reading it. I felt more balanced, and I don't say that lightly. Now, Paul, why are we here as mortals?
Well, you know, I'm a conscious channel, so my guides teach through me. I'm here having my experience. My guides say we're really here to realize ourselves and our full potential as a divine being. And essentially, this is school. Everything around us we're really creating as an opportunity to learn who and what we are. So that's what I get. I think we're here to realize ourselves at the highest level possible to us. And that's the teachings of my guides.
And would that extend to healing one another, that my inner light, so to speak, greets your inner light, together we have this conflagration?
That's exactly what it is. A lot of what I think I understand this is happening at a level of co-resonance. So when one person's lit up or they're activated at a certain level, they give permission to other people to do the same. So actually, I think all healing happens at that level of co-resonance. When my guides work, and they do a lot of workshops, they get people working with frequency in ways that are very, very tangible. You can feel it, and you can support somebody else in lifting their frequency really through intent. And what my guides say is when you're operating at a higher level of vibration, certain things can't be in accord there. And that is how healing occurs.
Now, when you say guide, and when you say channel, and when you say higher frequency, as I read your book, I felt it as a metaphor for me. Like, I know what a higher frequency means to me. It may not be, I need to define the terms. For me, it means being in greater harmony, operating from a higher level of goodness. That's what it means to me, to be at as opposed to a lower frequency where I'm brought down. So what do you mean by guides if you take it out of the metaphorical realm?
Well, it's not metaphorical for me. I mean, that wasn't my experience. I was raised pretty much an atheist on the Upper West Side of Manhattan until I was about 10. I was raised to believe that, you know, people were kind of, you know, maybe a little I don't know, small-minded who believed in this other stuff. It wasn't for us, you know. It's just not what I was raised to trust. When I was about 25, I began to open up psychically, which really was somewhat unexpected. And it really was happening at the same time that I was opening up spiritually. So I began to study a form of healing. And I found that when I had my hands on people, I could hear things for them. So if I had my hands on your heart and I heard the name Jeff, I learned to say, who's Jeff? And you might say, my husband, my brother, my dog, my kid. And that's how I began to know that I was hearing. And what my guides say is that we're all radios. You know, we're all broadcasting something. And what we choose to tune into really becomes the nature of the broadcast. So when my guides talk about frequency and vibration, essentially if you want to tune into fear, you get to broadcast fear, that we really do have choice here. So higher frequency is lifted at a different level, and it calls to it a different experience of being here in the world. So you know that when you're happy or you're feeling great about things, what you see around you is reflective of that. When you're frightened, when you're angry, when you're disappointed, that's the experience you see all around you as well. So my guides, to me, are the beings that speak through me. I actually didn't write the Book of Love and Creation. It's the second channel book that's come through me. I sit in a chair, I close my eyes, I turn on the CD recorder. There's a woman on the West Coast on the phone taking notes through the whole thing, and I dictate them. So the Book of Love and Creation, which is the new book that's out on September 13th, is actually the transcript of 30 days worth of sessions of me speaking. There wasn't, and the only thing that I wrote in this book was the introduction, which was my introduction to, you know, how I work and how I hear and how all this stuff happened. But I'm kind of an unlikely candidate for this, so I understand making it metaphorical, but for me, it's actually something that's quite tangible. I can feel it. I have access to information that I wouldn't normally have when I'm doing this work, which is the nature of my practice. And my guides seem to have the ability to tune other people to the frequency that they work with, which is actually a very tangible physical experience of higher vibration.
Now, since you brought it up, why didn't you write it yourself? Why did you dictate? Because of the speed or the flow?
I'm a spoken channel. I'm not a written channel. So, you know, I was a playwright, and there's something about being a playwright, I think, that's just naturally about hearing voices and relaying voices. I mean, that's what I studied in school. What I didn't know was that I was clairaudient until, you know, much later in the game. So when I work psychically and when I work as a channel, I literally am there and I am the vehicle for the broadcast. So I speak it. I don't do channeled writing, at least I haven't. I sense that if I were to do that, I would probably try to impose something myself. I can be inspired as a writer, and my guides can work with me and direct me. But when I'm speaking, and I have a very odd way of working, when I'm channeling, I whisper the words as they come, which is really the direct broadcast, and then I tend to repeat them in a louder voice so that people can hear. So the whole book, if you hear the transcripts, the original transcripts of the tapes, it's whisper, repeat, and goes on for about, you know, the original transcript was about 500 pages. And what was published actually is unedited. You know, the deal is I can't change anything. If this is the way it came out of my mouth, this is what it has to be. And I feel very strongly about that. And so I'm party to the transmission. They're using my vocabulary. They're using me as an example fairly frequently. But I don't think I could sit down and write this thing. I don't have this information. I'm not quite as smart as they seem to be.
Well, I don't know if it's the word is smart. Maybe it's wise. But let me ask you, we're going to commercial break. I'm getting a signal, but we will return to the Book of Love and Creation, written through the guides of Paul Selig. Did I get that correct?
Very
Paul?
well done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now you can take Debbie Mandel home with you. Her book, Turn On Your Inner Light, Fitness for Body, Mind, and Soul, will help you decompress with healthy, positive, concrete solutions. Common life challenges are presented so that you can quickly find the help you need. Emotional tips, original meditations, and a fun and easy-to-follow fitness workout for each mindset. This revolutionary new method will help you rewire mind and body to take back your power. Get it on Amazon.
Are you overwhelmed with the burden of taking care of children, parents, or both? Are you taking care of everyone else except yourself? It's time to change your habits and re-energize. Debbie Mandel gives you an innovative and easy-to-follow program for good health and happiness. In her magical new book, Changing Habits, the Caregiver's Total Workout, Debbie Mandel shows you step-by-step how to find the optimal balance between giving and receiving and guides you to exercise and eat right to take care of yourself. What are you waiting for? Read Changing Habits and start training for your life. Life does not need to be a burden. Get Changing Habits, the Caregiver's Total Workout on Amazon.
Listening to the Turn On Your Inner Light show. I'm your host, Debbie Mandel, and I'm speaking with Paul Selig, author of The Book of Love and Creation. Now, Paul, I'm going to ask you a provocative question. You go to a publisher, and I believe your publisher was Penguin?
Archer Penguin, yes.
Yes. And that's a very big house. How did you establish credibility with them? You know, anyone, I think, could elevate status calling themselves a mystic or clairvoyant or clairaudient. How'd you do that?
Well, it's a good story. I was invited to channel at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur, California, at a symposium. They were calling it the Superpowers Symposium. It's at the Center for Theory and Research. So I was invited to channel with an assembly of physicists, academics, scholars, writers, and among about 13 people that had been invited to attend this conference was Mitch Horowitz, who was the editor-in-chief of Tarcher Penguin. The book had just been transcribed and proofread. Literally days before, I'd just taken the whole thing to Kinko's and printed out a few copies and brought them with me. Mitch read the book on the airplane back from the symposium. He'd heard me channel. I did a session with him. I did many sessions while I was there with people that were attending the conference. And Mitch pretty much wrote me when he got off the plane saying, I believe this is something that we want to publish. So it happened in a very organic way. What was surprising to me was from the inception of the first book, and this is the first book called I Am the Word, which was published a couple of years ago, and Mitch has since published a new book. The whole thing was very, very fast. I should say, I didn't set out to do this at all. I had no plans to channel a book. I had been writing a show, and I got replaced on the show, and I went to bed for 3 days, and a woman who's a colleague of mine in academia, I'm a college professor, I have this whole other life as a somewhat traditional academic, called me up and said, this may be the time to write your memoir about how you began to be clairaudient. And my guides piped in and said, no, we have a book to write, and if you take 2 weeks, we'll do it. And at the time, I thought that was the craziest thing I'd ever heard, but I sat down in the chair 2 days later at the appointed time and delivered the manuscript of I Am the Word. It took 2.5 weeks because I took a couple of days off. So that was the book that I brought to Esalen just really several months later. So from the very first channeling session to when the book hit the stands was maybe 6 or 8 months. It was really kind of shocking how fast the whole thing happened. So in terms of the credibility, I was there working before, physicists and scholars and people that knew this work. It was really my first time working really almost out of my living room. I've been very low-key with this work for many years because I teach college, and I thought, well, I'll keep these things separate. So the Esalen invitation is what moved me into a more public form, and then certainly the books have transformed that as well. But I still balance this other life. I do have a practice as a psychic, and I also show up and teach a bunch of college kids a couple of times a week, and I run a graduate program. So this work is part of my life. I also think that my background, I'm a Yale graduate. I don't come off, I think, as exceedingly flaky to people when they first meet me.
Well, certainly not to me.
I'm sort of an unlikely candidate for this stuff. But the reality is, this is what happened to me. I've had this experience. I've been doing this in one form or another for a number of years now. It's transformed my life and continues to. And I feel that the teachings that are coming through are really, truly helpful and good. I need them myself. I'm a student of the work of my guides much more than I am the teacher. It's like anything else. I know that this is happening when it's happening. I'm actually on a TV show now called The Unexplained, which is on the Biography Channel, and those episodes are available online at, the Biography Channel website. But you can sort of see if you watch me work, there's something extremely immediate about the nature of the transmission that comes through me. It's not necessarily very elegant. It's very physical. I'm somewhat of a physical medium. When I'm channeling before groups, I'm on my feet, often with my eyes closed and walking around the room and talking a mile a minute. But the teachings that come through, I think, are good. But to answer your question about how this all happened, I really have to, give a lot of credit to to the Esalen Institute, and to Mitch Horowitz for believing in the work.
Well, let me ask you this. When you have these expressions, what does it do for you personally? Does it make you better at what you do? Do you have a renewed energy? And let me ask you this loaded question, which is just coming to mind. Can any of us do that, what you do?
Well, let me answer that part first. I think that the answer is yes. I don't know if people need to be conscious channels. People write me and say, I want to be a conscious channel, and my answer to them is why? Why do you want to do this? I think we don't interrogate the whys enough for why we want anything. I want the big house on the hill. Why do you want it, is what my guides would say. If you want it because it's a nice house, you're going to be happy there, that's great. If you want it because you don't think you're going to be good enough unless you have the big house on the hill, you're really perpetuating fear. And you're making your choices based in comparing your life to other people, which is always fear-based. So in terms of anybody being able to do this, yes, we're all radios. We all are sensitive. We live in a world and a culture, essentially, that tells us we're not allowed to know ourselves at these higher levels. One of the things the book in Love and Creation talks about a lot is developing your own innate senses so that you can begin to experience frequency in a way that's palpable. And that's your own clairsentience, your own clairaudience. I'm primarily clairaudient, which means that I hear. Mm-hmm. But clairsentience is feeling. We all feel energy. You know what it's like to go into a room where people have been fighting? Mm-hmm. And you can feel it in the air. The air is electric. You're feeling the frequency. Once you begin to understand that you're feeling frequency, you can begin to work with your own. And my guides are really big on that.
Let me just hold this door. We're going to the frequency of a commercial break, and we will return with Paul Selig, author of the Book of Love and Creation.
Dear listeners, I'm excited to tell you about my new book, Addicted to Stress. This is the message you need to hear. Are you addicted to stress? Do you do it all while everyone depends on you? Where's all this pressure coming from? It is coming from inside you. This is why my publisher, John Wiley, asked me to write Addicted to Stress, a woman's 7-step program to reclaim joy and spontaneity in life. This fun-to-read book teaches proven strategies to reclaim your life, silence your inner critic, build a healthy body, and reframe your thoughts to change your life for the better. Dare to be happy without the guilt. Addicted to Stress is easy to get. It's available at Barnes & Noble and other fine bookstores everywhere. You can also buy it at Amazon and other online retailers.
We're back with Paul Selig, author of the Book of Love and Creation. Now, I'm going to ask you another provocative question. When you and your guides were writing this, you mentioned the topic of love, and you had that embodied in Christ. I'm Jewish, so I don't believe in the divinity of Christ. I certainly enjoy a lot of the teachings, and I think love is very important. Do you have to be a Christian?
No, not at all. But the guides are very clear about this. Actually, in their first book, which is called I Am the Word, they spend a lot of time talking about what their definition of the Christ is, the aspect of the divine that can be realized in material form. Mm-hmm. That's the Christ. So the Christ isn't personified only as Jesus, which is how many people identify with that frequency. It's that divine spark that exists in all men and all women. It's the divine essence of you. What my guides say is, the purpose of the work is to awaken that, and that once that spark is awakened, its responsibility or its choice is to attempt to realize itself. You can't realize that aspect of yourself when you're hanging on to the old stuff, which is the negativity, which is the rage, which is the selfishness. It sort of gets in the way. So that's the answer there. It's really not a Christian teaching in a traditional sense, but they do use the language, of Christ. They've used the word Shekinah. They've used a lot of other words, in the book, but they really do define it as the aspect of the Creator that can be realized in material form.
Okay, but not, I guess, in the literal concept. I guess they needed a word.
The literal concept, I think the word is logos, which is really divine principle. Mm-hmm. And that's how they're referring to the Christ.
Okay.
So people think that, Jesus' last name was Christ. My understanding is that Jesus is one who realized the Christ. And my guides would probably say that there are others that have realized that level of consciousness as well. But they talk about a Christ consciousness, mm-hmm. which is a way of being and perceiving in the world. And I think that really transcends all denominations. I think anybody that tries to use that to create separation is missing the whole point of the message.
Well, Chaim Potok and My Name is Asher Lev used the concept of Christ in art. So for me, everything, even for me, the Bible is an allegory. Uh-huh. But that's me, and that's not to be imposed on others. So, for instance, like you being a clairaudient, there are prophets that have preceded you biblically, but to me, they were having visions or dreams, or they were poets. And to me, being a poet could be the same as this, but that's just my prejudice. Uh-huh. Now, or my limitation, mm-hmm. or my blockage. Mm-hmm. But I will say what I did really enjoy about your book is some of the principles we can live by on a daily level, like the difference between fixing and transforming.
Yeah, yep.
There are so many wonderful things before our time together is over that I want the listener to know how you can change the material with consciousness, how to reduce the fears in our lives that mm-hmm. propel us to control others. Like you kind of made the distinction between power and force. Mm-hmm. And these principles, and one of the favorite little quotes I had, and you won't even believe this, but, why should we do as the Romans do? And when you said, they were having Christians devoured by lions, and why do we have this phrase, the thoughts that the book makes you question, that you hold as inevitable, and you start to think, yes, let me question other beliefs.
Good.
Now, how do we learn more about your work?
Well, I have a website, which is www.paulselig.com. There's a lot of information up there. There's a lot of video up there of my work and the channelings that I do. There are transcripts of channelings, information on readings. So that's the first place to go. And what you're talking about the teachings and the practicality
I really have to, I have to go at this point because I have to deliver the health tips in a couple of minutes. I just want to say I could listen to you all day. You were very calming and relaxing. I think we had a good dialogue.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Be well.
Bye-bye now.
Affirmation of the week. Imagine how you might use familiar things in unfamiliar ways. And now for the latest medical trends. According to the University of California, almost half of adults with type 2 diabetes report acute and chronic pain. Heavy drinking rewires the brain and makes it more susceptible to anxiety problems. After chronic alcohol exposure, mice are unable to control a learned fear response, and this sheds light on the link between alcoholism and anxiety problems like post-traumatic stress. Reliance on supernatural explanations for major life events such as death and illness often increases rather than declines with age, according to a new psychology study from the University of Texas at Austin. And from the European Society of Cardiology, even in normal weight people, you could be thin, but if you got a belly fat puts people at health risks. So I guess you could be a thin, fat person at the same time. According to the Wall Street Journal, an FDA effort to speed approval of new medicines allowed drugs onto the market without proper safety analysis. This was according to 2 drug safety experts. And every few months, another study reports that many breast cancers are being overdiagnosed. That is, detected and treated, even though they would never cause problems if they were left alone. In one article, epidemiologists in Norway estimated that 15 to 25% of breast cancers found by mammograms were being treated unnecessarily. Ah, the wisdom to know the difference. Talk to your doctor. A team of scientists from Rockefeller University has shown that, at least in the short term, cholesterol levels did not improve when volunteers with vitamin D deficiency received megadoses of vitamin D. Well, we come to the close of another show. I have an educational website on stress management, health and wellness, totally free. TurnOnYourInnerLight.com. All the radio shows with the guest experts are archived forever and ever on TurnOnYourInnerLight.com. And click on the link, you go right into YouTube, and you can listen and send them on to your friends. Subscribe to my free newsletter from TurnOnYourInnerLight.com, and you will get a fresh new article on stress management, the latest radio show, the link emailed directly to you, and all the health tips I don't get to say on air because I run out of time for your reading pleasure. Have a wonderful week.